So what do you do if they don't love their neighborhood? That's the whole point of them moving. We skip this step.
Somebody's got to love the neighborhood. Door knock and find out
We
who
all
it
hate
is.
it here. We
Yeah.
all hate it here.
Hey guys, welcome back to Realestatable, your go-to podcast for raw, real, and relevant information in the real estate world. I'm Ashley, and I'm here with Tiffany, and we are your co-hosts. What are we
Yes.
talking about today?
We're talking about sucking at listings. No, not really. But what happens when your listings are stuck and you just cannot figure out what to do to actually get them sold?
Yeah, so we're just talking about creative ways to market your listing, get your listing out there. You know, sometimes buyers see that a house is sitting on the market and they're like, something's wrong with that, and they kind of just pass it up. So we don't want that to happen to your listings. So we've come up with a list of some tips and tricks that you can easily follow to boost your listing.
She says it so much nicer than I do. So let's give it a listen. All right. So maybe I was a little aggressive with the you suck and your listings not selling to start with. And Ashley definitely had a better approach to that introduction. But really, it feels like that, though. Like as a listing agent and you have all of these expectations set up, you do all of this hard work prepping and preparing to make sure your sellers are set up for success. And so initially you're like, what did I do wrong?
Yeah. Did I overprice?
Yeah.
Is it not staged well?
Yep.
Are the pictures okay?
Yes, which usually none of that is the answer.
Right.
Usually it's just the part of like the listing process. And so I think it's easy to think you suck, but really your listings are stuck. So what do you do? Like what is the next thing that you do? How are you explaining it to your seller? You knowing that the next showing could literally be the one that is the right family or person for your seller. So I think back about we recently had really over like the holiday season, the end of last year, where there was definitely a lull and a house that was like perfectly priced. I felt like we were priced really well. Where we presented well, it was an older home. It was not, I mean, there was not a really a small thing that could be done. It definitely could have used a paint job. Not every seller is set up to be able to do that. And there were showings after showings with really like the feedback that was given. I was like, okay, they just chose another one. They just chose a different one.
Yeah.
They just chose nothing really that we could help guide the seller into making a different decision. They are not like most sellers that have an amount of equity that they could just keep reducing until someone caught that a buyer. So in that situation, it was difficult. And so we want to try to talk today about creative things that you could be doing when your listings are stuck and you're trying to kind of be that lighthouse, speaking of hope for your seller, that hey, it just takes one buyer, one showing, one offer to be able to actually get your house closed. So anything to add on to that before we kind of dive into what are some suggestions?
Yeah, I mean, I think we just need to dive in
Okay.
because I feel like anything I'm about to say is probably something that's going to come up when we're talking
Spoiler
about it.
alert, spoiler alert too,
Yeah.
for sure. I think I would just start to say that when you're talking with your seller and you're going to talk through, here's an A to Z kind of toolbox on those listings that are stuck, how to get them sold. You don't want to hand them that entire toolbox. So
Right.
you are the handyman that is going to fix the problem, and you're going to go step by step. And so you're not going to sit here and say, hey, here's the everything and all the things, and then we're going to go from this to this to this to this. And I think that new agents that have come to our team and just talking with new agents, you want to kind of you think that you want to give them the map of this is everything I'm going to do. But I don't think that that's really the course that you need to be running your sellers on. Really, I think it needs to be, hey, this is the step. We're going to let that marinate. I always like to say, let that marinate, let that kind of sink in. Let's see how the market responds. And then we're going to talk about what's next based off of that response. So,
yeah. And I think most sellers think that the only option when your house is sitting on the market is a price reduction, but it's not always necessary.
Yeah, especially if your feedback is that you're priced really well in comparison to what we're looking at. So I think that creatively presenting, having some fun with it, getting more people through the door, because more people, more options is really what's going to drive that one person that it's going to take. So what would you say is like number one thing, like step one? Okay, that first weekend of showings came through, you get the feedback, you're like, okay, that didn't work. That first weekend of like the high velocity of the push of the marketing, what are you going to try first?
An open house.
A public open house.
Yep. Yeah, I'm gonna try to get buyers through the door, whether or not they're represented or if they're not represented. I'm trying to market that property. I'm trying to share it to as many Facebook groups and socials, and maybe pay for some Facebook ads to try to get that house out there. Because I mean, if it's sitting, it's not moving. You got to
Yeah.
get something through the door. And most sellers think that an open house is you're working for them.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you are. You're not. It's not like you aren't working for them. Typically, we know that an open house, you're trying to attract buyers so that you can help them find something, whether or not it's your listing or somebody else's listing. But an open house is usually in a seller's eyes like, hey, wow, my agent's doing open houses every weekend and
More
she's
people
working
coming through the
hard.
door.
Yeah,
Yep.
she's working really hard, and you are, but
And would you say like a strategy, because I know we tried different things. Would you say in this market currently, that first weekend, right out the door, are you thinking open houses make sense that first weekend, or is this only a strategy for the stuck to sold approach?
I think it's personal preference.
Yeah.
I think that if you're like really trying to get buyers, I think doing an open house the first weekend is going to be beneficial to you. I think that you're going to maybe get a buyer or two over the weekend. You may or may not sell your listing, but now you have a new buyer. I think that if you wait a week and say you have no offers, um, you can do that open house.
Yeah, and I also think it depends on your seller's preference too.
Yeah.
So you're going to talk about their goals, what they're wanting to do, if they're, if they're taking that weekend away or is it the following weekend, et cetera. So you kind of talking through that with the seller too. I've had sellers here recently that is like, no, they need to be with an agent. They need
Hmm.
to be pre-approved. It needs to be one set of people in my house at the same time. So really talking through their goals and not assuming that they're like totally gung ho for a
Hmm.
public open house for
Yeah.
sure. Yeah. So when you're prepping for an open house, you quickly went through stuff that you're doing for online marketing, et cetera. Are you doing anything specific for that neighborhood to help set that open house up for success?
Yeah, well, when we talked about the open house episode,
Mm-hmm.
we talked about doing a neighbors only,
Yeah.
the preview. So I like to do that, get neighbors' opinions, see what they like about the neighborhood, what they don't like. Again, it's creating that story
Mm-hmm.
that will help sell the house. Hey, Bill down the street really loves that there's a pond that he can go fishing in whenever he wants. Things like that, where you can just have personalized stories attached to the house.
Yeah. Yeah. And so that episode that you're just talking about, any of this stuff that we're talking today on creatively selling
Hmm.
through open houses, that is full of golden nuggets
Yes.
that we're diving deeper on that too. But I do think the neighbors only open house, I think that that's another way to create the buzz.
Hmm.
It's another way for you to be having, like if there's a neighborhood Facebook, using the seller to help market for that.
Hmm.
And yes, the goal is absolutely to be selling this house for the seller, but I think the more volume and velocity that you can be using towards attraction to the property, the more you can be doing that is going to create results. It's like the attraction method for
Yeah.
that property.
And then also marketing it that way as like kind of you can pick your own neighbors, or
Mm-hmm.
like do you know
Mm-hmm.
someone that you would love to live by,
Yep.
or somebody who's been trying to move into this neighborhood. So it's marketing it different than, hey, this house is for sale. It's personalizing it as pick your neighbors.
Yeah.
Who do you want to live
Help
next to
us
you?
advertise
Yeah.
that
Hmm.
property for sure. One of my favorite things to do is realtor open houses.
Hmm.
So that's definitely not something we do right off the bat because it does take planning, prepping, invitation time, etc. But I love me a theme. I love
Yeah.
me a theme party. I like partnering with different affiliates in our industry. So really, the cost effort of that is minimal because you're going to be partnering with a lender, with a mortgage company, with title companies, inspectors, someone that
Hmm.
wants to invest into your client or into the real estate clients in the area. And so when you're looking to prepare that, I always love to theme something out. So if there is something special about the neighborhood, or we'll use different times of years to use for realtor open houses, we just did a easy peasy lemon squeezy
Hmm.
themed with Katie's listing that was stuck. That was a stuck
Yeah, it
listing.
was.
And then ended up with two offers like a month later. But that using some type of theme is always a way to attract. And we have agents and affiliates that say, you guys always have a fun time.
Hmm.
Lisa just did her amazing agent open house,
Mhm.
her affiliate open house. She has land to sell. Like, how the heck are you going to do land that's 40 minutes from most people's
Yep.
offices? Like, how are you going to get them out there? And that turned into a mega affiliate open house where she was inviting them out to the land for the feedback, the attraction, the exposure, and then got sponsors to do a clay shooting event. And that
Yeah.
was all themed around um, the Super Mario Brothers duck hunting game.
Yeah.
That was really, really cool. Really cool.
I think you're talking about feedback, and I think that doing an agent open house is the one of the best ways to get agent
100%.
feedback,
Yep.
because you can talk to them personally where it's not like a computer generated. I know some people use like, how would you rate this home? 5 is the best and 1, like, you're talking to these people, hey,
Yeah.
where do you think, do you think this room should be painted? And you can get a little bit more personal on their feedback. But if you're stuck getting feedback from agents from the showings, we just created a feedback form which has a QR code on that form, and the agent can scan it, give feedback, and then they get a Starbucks card.
Yeah. We've had to start to pay for feedback, which is
Yeah.
crazy in a professional environment. If you are showing a listing, which I get it as a buyer's agent, you don't want to give all the cards away if your buyer
Mhm.
might actually be offering. But I'm so sorry, 20
Oh my
agents
gosh.
in,
Yeah.
not all of y'all are offering, obviously. And
Yeah.
we kind of stagger it too to say like, okay, here's the little bit of the bait. Like,
Mhm.
please give us feedback. We'll pay you a $5 Starbucks card to get that feedback for your seller. So you don't have to do the QR code. You don't have to do the input form. You don't necessarily have to pay them, in a gift card to get that. But I think that it's crucial to be making sure that you're getting feedback, whether it's through an agent open house and you're actually having thoughtful conversation to those agents that come
Mhm.
through, or really pressing those showing agents to give you feedback to kind of tell you what is it that the seller can do to actually get this property number one on your client's list.
And getting the feedback right away is, I feel like, more crucial than ever because, for example, I don't even know. We walked through a lot of new construction over the weekend. So I'm not going to count all of those, but I showed 5 different buyers. I probably showed 15 houses minus the new construction because we were just walking floor plans. But going back and I'm like, okay, which house is this person asking me
Mm,
for feedback? I can't remember. I need to pull it up. Um, so when it's at least fresh in your mind, you can say, hey, how is your showing at 123 Main Street? Because you're tracking who's showing your properties, and if you're not, you should be. But just asking them shortly after their appointment when it's fresh in their mind,
yeah,
they may not be able to give the feedback, but at least it's showing, okay, I've asked you, and then maybe later tonight I'm going to ask you again or tomorrow to try to get it because sometimes you need that feedback to help push your seller into a certain direction.
yeah, for sure. Sometimes it's something you've already been kind of pressing for, etc.
Yeah.
I also in that text request will include a link to the MLS. So like, hey, you
That's
showed
smart.
123 Short Street. Here's the QR code to leave us feedback, but here's also a reminder. Because you're right, if it's 5 different buyers or 20
Hmm.
different houses or whatever, it's hard to remember what is Tiffany's listing. Like, I don't care. I almost died by showings in
Yeah.
new construction walking the plank.
Ugh.
Like,
So after listening to Q's episode, after we recorded it, I listened to it and I was like, man, I'm so motivated. So I'm answering my phone all the time now, right?
yep.
So I showed a house over Memorial Day weekend, and the agent called me like Wednesday. So it was a few days after I showed it. I had showed those particular buyers 10 houses. And she's like, "Hey, Ashley, I just want to know what you thought about 123 whatever." And I was like,
What
I was and I
a
was driving and I was like, what does that house look like? What color? What? I was like, had no idea
You're like,
because
"Did I even show that
yeah,
house?"
she's like,
But
"Oh,
I'm the professional here, so don't worry
well,
about
yeah,
it.
but I mean, they all start to I tell my
Yes.
buyers all the time, I'm like, houses are going to blend together." And
Yeah.
even as the agent, I was like, yeah, they didn't like it. They offered on something else. Like, I don't
How
know.
how was that great feedback? But she
But
waited
yeah,
how many days to
yeah,
check
I
in
had
with
no
you? Yeah.
but then
Yeah.
after we hung up, I did look up the address and I was like, "Oh, okay, I do remember this house. They actually did kind of like it, but they ended up going with something with more acreage."
Yeah.
So, but anyway, just getting the feedback quicker, sooner than later so that the agent remembers what the house actually looks
And
like.
then reminding them
Yeah.
with a link would be another
I
good,
didn't even think
too.
about sending the link. That's really smart
Yeah.
because I'm always like, "What?" And then I end up looking
Well,
it up anyway.
it doesn't work if you're calling, but I think that
Right.
if I get to the place of calling you, it's because this is 911. You better be giving me feedback, feedback on that for sure. I agree. So another really cool concept that we have been talking about is the local concept,
Mhm.
like definitely connecting with more businesses, the area, creating the story of home, creating
Mhm.
why the sellers have loved living in that area so much. So talk
Mhm.
about that. I love this idea.
I feel like I always talk about COVID, but I think that COVID really promoted small business.
For sure.
I mean, we were just support local, and I think that that concept is like such a feel good concept
Mhm.
and has just translated into like this is life now. Like you want to support local no matter where you are. I mean, like my water bottle is covered in stickers of local businesses and just things like that. But utilizing those local businesses by tagging them in your posts, your stories, um, around the house that you're
Yeah,
listing.
so you're saying, like, if this is, like, close by, like, a smoothie place, like
Yeah,
a
like you
locally
could,
owned smoothie place
yeah,
or something
hey,
like that.
if you buy 123 Main Street, you can enjoy smoothies from Smoothie
So
Co. on the way to work, you know? So it's just,
every day.
yeah, every day. Or hey, if you live here, this pizza place delivers pizza for free.
Yeah. And
Whatever it is. And you're tagging all these
tagging them, yep.
businesses and it's going on their pages. They're probably sharing your posts. Hey, thanks for tagging me. And it just gets you out there, gets your listing out there again.
Yeah. I also think that you actually getting content in those
Oh
businesses,
yeah.
and like creating reels about like, okay, I just stopped at Elm Street and I'm now at Smoothie Co. grabbing that and like creating that as part
Mm-hmm.
of the story of like this is the livability of the property. I totally agree with this is furthering your reach.
Mm-hmm.
So many local companies have poured back into us as a real estate team as we are continuously tagging them, promoting them, sharing their stuff,
Yep.
etc. But using it from a listing side of this is that you could, okay, here's the 700th time that we have promoted and
Yeah.
presented, and here's a flyer, and here's a this, and here's a that. This could be something that you're like, hey, we're talking about Elm Street still, but it's actually this
Yeah.
concept as well. But I think that that's another really creative way. A listing stuck. Okay, cool. Let's use Smoothie Co. to further the reach of who is the audience that's seeing it. A really great
Yeah.
idea.
And if you're also taking content at these businesses, you can use that in so many different ways. It doesn't have to just be for your listing. You
Yep.
can use that as your social. Hey, stop by, you know, Pizza Street, Pizza Co. I don't know. Stop by over and
We need more relevant content to be referencing for this. I'm
yeah,
like
but like just I mean, we did it at Capriccio or not Capriccio's.
Camachos
Camacho's. We just did a pizza video there and we got to eat pizza and we highlighted their
and
business.
beer. Don't forget the beer part.
We had one beer, okay? And it was for the video.
It was for the video. It was for the gram. That's why.
Well, it was yeah, anyway. It was good. Their pizza's the best.
It
But
is. It's so good.
yeah, they ended up sharing that video and
Oh,
tagging
so
me.
much.
Yeah.
So
And
much.
so I was able to reach their reach by just showing up for an hour.
Yeah, and I think that we can totally be doing this just from um a personal branding, your personal business, etc. But I think that using this concept for those listings,
Hmm.
where you're sharing, okay, here's a little bit about the company and a lot of bit about the property right around the corner. Them sharing that would be the whole point in this
Yeah.
stuck to sold kind of concept, for sure. So,
I think another thing that you can do besides the local businesses is revamping your marketing a little bit.
hmm
So,
changing it up.
yeah. So if your seller, you have your pictures and everything, but maybe highlight the neighborhood. So maybe that means you're hiring the photographer to do drone footage
That's what
of
we did
of the
on
neighborhood.
Katie's listing. Same
Yeah.
thing. It was like, wait, we totally forgot at the initial part that there is massive walking trails with like a whole
Oh
stream
yeah.
behind that. And then it was like 2 weeks on the market. And she's like, wait, why haven't we done that? Okay, cool. Get him back out there. Let's
Yeah.
feature and focus on that.
I mean, most neighborhoods, and people might be buying out of state and they might want to see
Yeah, for
how
sure.
close are the houses? Are they spaced out? Are they touching each other? Some neighborhoods have ponds or parks, and you can kind of see like the proximity from, the listing to the pond.
hmm
So I think that that adds a huge value. And then again, that's something you can share on social.
Well, and I also think that having different ways to market the properties too, like we've
Mm-hmm.
started to do a 3-stack photo in our stories to kind of change up the way that we are pushing out the marketing. So it's not the same thing that you've, oh, here's the flyer again. Here's
Mm-hmm.
the same thing over and over again. So yes, you can be changing up your photography, you can be expanding on that, etc. But have a couple different ways that you're actually presenting it. Okay, cool. You've done a reel with, your professional photographer. You should be doing some just behind the scenes kind of stuff that you've done personally as well. Using the open houses, prepping or preparing for those. Those could turn into real social
Mm-hmm.
media content. Doing the realtor open houses, that's themed out. It's catching people's attention. Just really thinking outside of the box that if you've already checked it, cool, flip that box around and check it again.
Mm-hmm.
Do it in a different approach because social media is hitting so many different people in so many different ways, especially if you're doing paid marketing with those things too. So
Yeah.
thinking outside of the box for sure.
And another thing that I would suggest doing is having the seller write what they love about the
Yeah.
neighborhood, but then also maybe asking a few of the neighbors. So I'm just like, what do you love about your neighborhood? Do you love the proximity to shopping or um the fit I just went fishing in our pond last night. So
Yeah.
I'm like all about the
The
fishing. But
fishing.
like fishing in the pond, the park, um the mom group or whatever it is, finding out what people love about that neighborhood and then highlighting that as well.
So what do you do if they don't love their neighborhood? That's the whole point of them moving. We skip this step.
Somebody's got to love the neighborhood. Door knock and find out
We
who
all
it
hate
is.
it here. We all
Yeah.
hate it here. No, I think that you could, even if they're not saying it, you
Mhm.
are creating that story too. Like
Yeah.
it could be created with local businesses, and I think that cool. What do you love to do within a 5-minute radius? Like we love living at this address because Smoothie Co is right around the corner or something like that.
Yeah.
But I definitely have some sellers that they don't have the greatest painted picture, and I'm like, well, we're gonna bring the energies up in this house.
Yeah.
Yeah, through neighbors, through local businesses, et cetera, for sure. Yep, I agree. I think that that's a good point in sharing that message. And you're not necessarily asking them to like video them.
No.
You're just using it
Mhm.
as part of that.
And if they don't love their neighborhood, at some point they loved their house. So
Yes.
like what do you love about your house? And then you can create that story about the memories that the seller has made and kind of like how the new buyers can make their memories in this home too.
That's a good point too. It's like saying, "Cool, you chose this house though. There was many other
Yeah.
houses that you looked at. What was the thing that was the turning point for you to make that offer?" Good point.
Yeah.
Really good point. I can't think of anything else really besides what we've covered. I think that just because you think you've done it once doesn't mean you can't reinvent that and do it again for a
Mhm.
listing, et cetera. But anything else that you can think of?
I just think that you've got to get creative if it's sitting there. But using the feedback from other agents to leverage moving your seller a certain way. So
Changes.
the first house that she was talking about that was sitting, it really needed to be painted. It was kind of like a purpley color. Um, and it just needed a fresh coat of paint. And honestly, once the seller finally painted it after like
It was literally
five,
like the
six
next
months,
next showing.
yeah,
5, 6 months of sitting, painted it, next showing.
and then it went under contract.
Yep. Yeah, I think so too. And I think that sometimes it does take that level of a strain of
Hmm.
a seller moving out, having, double housing payments, being already at another state, ready to move on, that it does sometimes take that before they really take the uncomfortable move and the action. But creating that story, even if it's like, hey, another feedback, same thing,
Hmm.
another feedback, same thing. But I always encourage my sellers too that it literally takes one person, and that
Yeah.
person truly is already determined. For every sale that we make, the right person is always going to make the right offer to present the right situation to get you to closing. And
Hmm.
so keeping your seller positive through all of this, having that positive conversation. And I know for you, it does feel like you suck. Like
Yes.
that's really literally uh, right out of my mouth. First sentence, it does feel like you suck. You think all of these things and you've put a ton of time and energy into it. And so, from a standpoint of you really wanting to make this happen for your sellers, and of course, get paid, of course, for everything you've
Hmm.
already put into it. But you have to stay encouraged, make sure you're being that voice of reason for them, and staying positive, and you're having off camera, off the phone call, off of the interactions you're having with the seller, stay positive in all of those transactions that are kind of sitting and not really moving for sure.
Okay, so we talked about changing the marketing and kind of reusing, revamping. What would you say? So incentives for buyers, incentive.
Mm,
We didn't touch on that.
we really didn't.
No, we talked a lot about the
That was my one
marketing.
more thing.
One more. Here's an added bonus.
Here's an added bonus.
No, but aside from marketing and promoting the house, what are things now? This isn't working. None of the marketing is moving the needle. What would be your next?
I think the first thing would be incentivizing the agents to get the showing. So
Okay.
adding some type of bonus, which I think needs to start at least $1,000.
Mm-hmm.
We're seeing a lot of new construction that have several houses that are sitting after construction is completed, going up to like $5,000. But if you need more showings because more people through the door, I would incentivize those agents
Mm-hmm.
to actually get them through the door. So it might not be on your client list, but let's add this one to it. You need to be marketing that to your the sphere of agents in your area. They need to know about that, not just sitting on your MLS. We have every agent in our association, all of their emails. They get an update that says, "Hey, agent bonus, go
Mm-hmm.
make more money, sell our house." You need to get more people through the door. So I always say, step one, always add that bonus, and that's contradictory to a lot of where people's kind of approach what that is.
Yeah, we also have a realtor Facebook page of
Mhm.
agents in our association. So if you don't have that in your local market, create it
That's a great
or
idea.
work with your board to create it. Um, so many great questions, so many conversations happen on that page where it's like relevant information, and it's really a community of realtors trying to help each other out versus competing with each other.
Yeah. Yep, I agree, and that's a good place to be communicating, like, "Hey, we have a realtor open house that's coming up.
Yes.
We have a bonus that's just been added."
Hmm.
If the bonuses don't work, you always can be talking about seller incentives, and
Yeah.
sometimes I couple those with, like, a lower seller incentive, like, "Hey, we'll pay 5,000 in the buyer's closing cost with a $1,000 bonus," and kind of play with those numbers, and I also kind of ahead of time talk about if this doesn't work, we have a 10-step program that we're going to get your house sold. But I kind of prep our sellers for that's a possibility or a strategy in order to help get your house sold, because reducing that price really should be, okay, we've tried everything.
Hmm.
Now we're going to reduce the price, because that price reduction in this market in this time really says, okay, we were wrong. Sorry, we were wrong. We weren't priced correctly. And it's not working, or the possibility something's wrong with the house. When the reality is maybe nothing's wrong with the house. It's just lower demand
Hmm.
with a higher amount of inventory.
Well, I think there's other incentives that you can offer too. So you mentioned closing costs and agent bonus, but if you're trying to attract buyers, you could maybe have your seller offer a home warranty. So if
Yep.
some of the feedback has been, oh, well, the HVAC looks like it's on its last leg, well, maybe offer a home warranty to a buyer with a full price offer. Or if people are mentioning, the paint, it just really needs to be painted, but your seller's not, maybe doesn't have the funds right now, but when they sell, they would have the funds. Offer a credit at closing so that the buyer can get the house painted.
Yeah.
So it's just finding those pain points of what's holding the house back and what's holding buyers back from making the offer, and then coming up with a solution.
But I think back to the example, the house that needed to be painted to get the next
Hmm.
buyer to offer. With that scenario, we were talking through like, okay, hey, let's add a paint allowance onto that. But really, it was the visual.
Yeah.
Until it was actually painted, that paint allowance on there did nothing to get those buyers to switch. So that's another thought too, is like, okay, add the paint allowance, but then really, when that doesn't work, okay, we might actually
Hmm.
have to do the work.
Well, and sometimes I think, sometimes people don't want to move into a house and be like, oh, we have to have it painted. Even if
Mhm.
it's being paid for by somebody else,
Yeah.
it's still the coordinating and the logistics of moving and all of that. Picking out a color.
Yeah, for sure. But if you guys have any other
Hmm.
suggestions, things that have worked for you, would love to grow as a community to learn how you guys are going from stuck to sold, and any of your listings that have been sitting. Just really collaborating together. I think we can grow in this area for sure.
Yeah. So if you guys found this helpful, please give us a 5-star rating and a download, and we will see you on our next episode.
So we really don't suck as listing agents. We just might be stuck in the listing of some of our houses to get it sold. And so I think that I have so many good things that we kind of wrapped up into a shorter episode about how to get those listings out of that stuck mode, get them really creative ways of presenting our listings, getting more attraction to them.
Yep.
But what was your best takeaway? What would you say you took away today?
I just love highlighting the local businesses because I think that the more you pour into them, the more they're going to pour into you. And I just think it's just really important to just support the local and show a buyer what all they can enjoy when living in a certain neighborhood. Because with us, especially, we work with a lot of relocation clients and they don't know the area. So if you're highlighting what they can do or use or explore while living in a certain house, I think that's gold.
Well, and I think we should be doing that anyways for our listings. That should be like a step one, at the beginning. But I think that when you're sitting there, we're talking about taking the box, flipping it over, checking it again, checking the box of what you need to do as a listing agent. That's an easy thing that is endless.
Like, you could reuse that 100 times over.
Well, you could do 10, 15, 20, an unending amount of businesses partnering with that listing and using that reach to use their sphere as they're sharing those as well. So I think that that's one of those things like, oh, I've run out of options. No, bull, you've not. You actually have enough that you could just continue expanding your area. This is 5 miles from the listing, et cetera. So I really love that idea too. And I also think that it's super important. One of my takeaways, one of my reminders is to remain positive when you're in the face of your seller, because those sellers are so stressed out. I think about when we've sold a house. I mean, it's bananas. Like it is crazy, the stress level in an industry that we know where you just turn straight psycho when you become a seller. And so I think that making sure you're remaining positive and keeping that toolbox not hidden, but keeping that toolbox under your arm to make sure that they know, okay, we haven't tried everything. We're going to continue. We're going to let that stuff marinate, see how the market responds to it, and then decide what the next best thing is. Like, we have a solution. We're going to work through this together. We're going to get you from stuck to sold.
And the other thing is every tool in that toolbox is not going to be used in the same order from this house to this house. So you're going to have to try different strategies that might work for this house, but might not work for another house. So just knowing when to use the tools on what house. But I think that we gave a ton
of options. And there's a lot of episodes that kind of pull into this episode as well. So make sure you have not checked them out, that you're also giving those a listen as well.
Yeah. Well, that's all we have for you guys today, and we will see you next time.